If you want to start or scale your property development business to 8 figures and beyond, then you're in the right place. This is the Property XPerts Podcast with Ben Richards and Jack Diggins, two serial entrepreneurs bringing weekly insights from our award-winning businesses. In these podcasts, you'll learn how we found, funded and delivered over £80 million worth of property in the last 6 years, with templates you can use, deal analysis and deep dive discussions that will help you build your businesses successfully. We hope you'll enjoy.
Hello everyone and welcome. It is just me here for this moment, but Ben is on his way. He's actually stuck in traffic and had asked me to crack on. But anyway, that was an intro to us. If you haven't joined us before, we're serial entrepreneurs that share the highs and lows of our businesses every week on a Friday, and we hopefully can resonate and share tips to any business owner out there, whether it's a service-based business or even not in construction or property. And we've got a good episode today that's more referencing around business generally and what support you might need in your business to grow and sort of check-ins that you might need to have yourself. So we hope you get value from this session. And if you do, please do share it with someone that you know. So without further ado, I think I should be able to, I'm doing the tech side of things here as well. So do bear with while we're doing this. So our company is aiming to deliver 1,000 homes, which is £1 billion worth of property, collaborating with investors. I think it's key that you guys have a vision so that whether it's your stakeholders or your team can be part of that. And today's episode, we're going to be talking through Daniel Priestley and Gary Economics interview, which came out on the Diary of the CEO about a week ago. I was really fortunate to spend time with Daniel in Dubai in December last year. Love the guy. I think he's very humble. I think he's extremely smart, very switched on, very good with geographical economics and the push and pull factors. So I'll be going into a bit of a summary about that, but I'd highly recommend you go and watch that. We'll be whipping your business into shape. So we'll be talking about work in progress costs and why they're important and why tomorrow's problems could be known now. We'll be talking about non-exec advisory. So we have a non-exec. We met with him today. And I'll be talking about whether you need a non-exec in your business and at what point we think you do need a non-exec in your business. We'll be talking about the directors, looking at the finance reviews. We've talked about finance reviews generally before, but what about getting your heads together, kind of like a non-exec position when you need to get your heads together to go through important things. We'll be talking about the Property Ed YouTube video. If you don't know what Property Ed, it's run by Tyler Newman, and soon to be a collaboration with XP and Tyler Newman on that. We'll be talking about profit percentage on GDV before or after finance. So these 2 points actually, and including the next point, was actually brought up in a mentoring session that I did this week. Shout out to Karen for asking the good questions. I thought, why not share this with our followers? So I'll be talking about what profit on GDV is before or after finance and what you should be calculating on your spreadsheets to work that figure out. We'll be then talking about limited company or personal name. I think it's fairly obvious nowadays what the structure should be, but we'll be talking through that and what sort of setup you have and why it might or might not be or could be improved. We'll be talking about why we don't invest up north. It is interesting when we were, growing our sort of knowledge pool and our sort of strategy as business owners. You hear of people up north that are getting 15% yields, and what does that mean and why haven't we explored that particularly? And then last but not least, we'll be talking about time management. Again, similar position was driven from a mentoring situation, and I just thought this was a really useful exercise. Do you feel like your business is growing? You probably need to bring someone in, but you don't know at which point you should be doing that. And this easy tip should help you bring the right people in at the right time. Cool. That's that. And I'm sure at any point here, I might be spoiling something. Ben's head will appear in the episode. Cool. So kicking off with my friend Daniel Priestley and Gary Economics' interview. So essentially, Gary Economics is a successful trader. He seemed like he's been trading since 2007, 2008, I believe, and he's made really good money. Millions some years in trading. So predicting trends, predicting predicting something. It could be up or down, and that sort of delta, what she's predicting, whether it's market scrutiny or market growth, he's gambling that bet. I don't know if anyone's ever watched the movie The Big Short with Christian Bale, who actually went to primary school where I used to live. That's similar. It's predicting the crash, which actually happened. So kind of the way I see Gary Economics is kind of like within that environment where there's so much trauma in the market. It's people siding with a potential reality and then winning on whether they're right or not. Daniel Priestley is what I would call a tech entrepreneur. He's a master of marketing, digital marketing. He runs a platform called ScoreApp. I think he runs multiple £100 million businesses. And his gig is he's the key person of influence. He brings the people in around him, the team. And he scales those tech businesses. The reason he likes tech businesses is because he can sell them in any market, sell them to any client, and there's complete autonomy between where he's trading, whether it's the US, the UK. And I think he's actually selling to clients in his ScoreApp product in 47 countries. So you can kind of see there where we're selling flats to someone that lives in, for example, in Marlow. He's selling tech to people that live anywhere and everywhere. So a very seamless attitude towards business and very frictionless. So you've got these two people. Now, they're both entrepreneurs, and I would love to think that most people know who obviously Stephen Bartlett is. So I won't go into detail about that. But Stephen Bartlett facilitated this conversation because Gary basically believes the way to operate this country now is to tax the rich. So to target the rich people of the world, of the UK, and tax them. He came from extremely humble beginnings and believes that is the best way to help out the sort of wealth equality or an inequality that's being shared in the UK. Good question. Is Gary so Tom said, is Gary an entrepreneur? I mean, he's got a YouTube channel, which has actually got a really, really strong following, which I would say personal brand is quite entrepreneurial. He calls himself a trader. I would probably say that his most of his career, he's been a trader. I think he's now trying to push a movement that, I mean, one thing that I can't get my head around with Gary is if all of this is a hoax and he's just trying to be the only one going against the grain, he's just building a huge following. To get on Diary of the CEO is a huge feat for any YouTubers. If I got onto Diary of the CEO, I can guarantee that our viewership from our viewership would be completely different. Tom saying, yeah, an employee. I would have said his YouTube channel is entrepreneurial. I would say his activities as a trader are an employee essentially. But it all depends. So Tom, to come back to that, to play devil's advocate, I know a trader, super successful trader, probably as successful as Gary, very, very close friend of mine. And he invests in startup and independent businesses through seed raising, through EIS schemes, through SEIS schemes, and he's probably got about 30 investments across SME businesses. I would say he is quite entrepreneurial, my friend. Because he's got those endeavors and those investments that he backs those businesses. But a trader is a trader, so it's a good point. Is he an entrepreneur? I don't know. I'd said his YouTube channel is quite entrepreneurial, but Daniel Priestley is 100% through and through. If you cut him open, he'll be bleeding entrepreneurialism all over the floor. And Ben is here playing around on the setup on the screen, which is good because.
Hello, sorry I'm late.
Can
you hear me?
So yeah, I mean, Tom's asking loads of questions. His own capital or someone else's. So I think you're asking about my friend that invests his own capital. He's a trader, so he trades in the markets with a bank's money, and then his profits, which is significant amounts, I would say, is his own capital backing businesses. But anyway, let's not go down a rabbit hole, Tom, of my friend, and let's talk about the podcast in hand. Ben, have you watched this podcast?
I have. Yes.
Yeah, good. I'm glad, because otherwise I
didn't enjoy how much Gary just like jumped in and didn't let Daniel Priestley like chat. Like Daniel would start a conversation, start his retort, and Gary would just jump in and asked the same question over and over. I thought Gary came across. He has some good points, and he's obviously very, very experienced. But I guess I side mainly with Daniel Priestley above and beyond Gary's viewpoints, if I'm honest.
Yeah. I mean, Daniel handled it extremely well, and Gary almost seemed quite a little bit desperate. But anyway, for listeners that I was kind of explaining the rebuttal here, and essentially Gary's view is to tax the rich, and Daniel Priestley's view is to incentivize the rich to reside in the UK, because he kind of sees himself as a almost like a non-dom UK. He's married to a British lady, and that's why he lives in I think he lives in Notting Hill. And that is why he's very much backing the Brits. And essentially, he's saying that if we entice entrepreneurs to come into the country, that has an osmosis effect, and businesses flourish. Let's use a prime example. Daniel's got over 100 employees. Those 100 employees are in his business, and they spend money in the local shops and with local businesses, and the whole brand sort of shop local. So he's actually incentivizing people to come into the UK. So that is the main tension point here. Gary is almost coming from a position where he's saying, how do you prevent wealth sort of inequality? And Daniel Priestley is saying, I think we can get there with clever management and bringing the right people in. So that's what the argument is about. Obviously, it's quite a contentious conversation because, Daniel believes that the world's out there and you can go and get it and to some degree create your own future. And Gary is of the view that he was 1% of super lucky people that got rewarded for his skill set that he was born with, which was kind of like mathematics and the way that his brain works from a trading capacity. But everyone else is struggling, and that's kind of his view. But super interesting interview. I think that these interviews are really, really important because essentially you're not going to see these debates on the news. You're going to see more of the debates from Gary's side, because normally the blame is pointed at the people that are able to bugger off to Dubai or wherever it may be, and essentially the finger is pointed at those rather than pointing it at the government. So I think Daniel's concept is point the finger at the government, and I think Gary's problem is point the finger at the rich. And basically, Gary thinks anyone of a net worth over 10 million should be pillaged with their capital to shed it down and spread that wealth. Whereas Daniel's view is if you bring in more billionaires and more entrepreneurs and more millionaires, the country's only going to get better with that sort of. Look, for an example, at Dubai, there's no tax there. We've actually lost more millionaires in the last year than we've ever lost. A lot of them have gone to Dubai. Some have gone to America. That now that money is being spent over there. So there's local businesses struggling. We were talking on the Ground Up podcast that the theme parks are having to shut. And that's because people aren't going to theme parks and spending money. But it's kind of like a very different argument. Obviously, we are of the entrepreneurial background. I think Ben and I will probably agree that entrepreneurialism is really good for the country. And that's kind of it. I'd love for you guys to watch it. But anything else to add, Ben?
Obviously, I missed sort of a lot of what you said. I really do disagree with Gary's sentiment around him being if you come from a poor background, you're screwed. I completely don't agree with that. My background certainly is more sort of working class with my parents and my upbringing and having to get grants and things like that to go to university and pave my own way. And I think there's absolutely everything for grabs, no matter what situation or background you come from. I think it matters how much you want it more so than the surrounding that you're brought up in. Obviously, the surroundings absolutely have an impact, but I think if you are of the right sort of mindset and attitude, there isn't much you can't achieve. And it's a shame that Gary's sentiment is that unless you've got a rich dad, you're never going to be rich. You're never going to grow up to be anything, which is absolutely the wrong message, I think, in my opinion. But it was a very, very interesting debate. It is. I was looking forward to listening to it and sort of seeing both sides of the conversation. So yeah, I would absolutely implore people to log on and add to that 2.8 million view count. That's
it's growing quick. 8 days. I mean, it's that good. I might watch it again, which is cool. Tom said we desperately need more entrepreneurs, not less. Completely agree with that. Cool. Work in progress costs. So this actually came off the back of, we're having conversations with our non-exec, which we've got a slide on later, and we also had finance review last week. And essentially, we always talk about the importance of finance reviews and doing your balance sheet, your P&L, and working through those costings, but equally working out the work in progress. And now this is super relevant for Central Suites, for an example. We've got 7 live projects that we're developing out, which kind of makes our balance sheet, which kind of makes our P&L, and kind of makes everything look a bit doom and gloom while we're doing the heavy delivery of 7 projects. That's a large chunk of projects that we're delivering. So we always want to break out that work in progress with our accountant or bookkeeper, so we can actually see where we're going, what sort of tracking and what we're spending on each project. But one of the main things is when you're working out a work in progress, so for example, with our project Churchill Way, which is our doctor's surgery, we converted to 5 flats. I think there's a deep dive on it somewhere back in our raft. If there isn't, we will have to do one. And essentially, that is a block of cluster flats that we're building out. We're pretty much at the point where we're almost at the last drawdown of the build. It's quite difficult to actually pull together what you've spent on that particular site. Obviously, we've got our original deal analysis that we can pull out and look at what we were originally proposing. Our bookkeeper should factor in the completion statement on purchase, the purchase price, the purchase costs, all the fees to get the site bought. We're obviously tracing all of our construction costs to get to the point where we are. We can also allocate the financial costs through the project, because we'll get a heads of terms document with an agreement in principle from the lender showing what interest is being charged. So we can kind of, at that point, as we go through, predict where we're at. And we kind of now know where the work in progress costing is at. And then we can track that against, obviously we're budgeting as we're going, but then it does like an all-encompassing cost on that particular project. And it makes life a lot easier if you're month in, month out reporting that sort of work in progress against the budget. Ben did a session on coding and Zero, which again is a more granular level to really help you itemize each area and know what you spent in planning or pre-planning or demolition or whatever it may be. But yeah, I would say that if you are not already adopting work in progress costings into your business, add that onto your sort of bookkeeping requirement and Zero requirement, so you have an exact understanding of where your costing's at for projects. I don't know if my signal's bad or Ben's is. Did you want to add anything on WIP, Ben?
No, I think you covered most of it. If there's loads of historic content that we've shared in terms of management accounts, having your profit and loss, your balance sheet, and your sort of cash flow forecasting in check. So yeah, if you haven't checked those out before, then go back and watch some of the deep dives that we've done in that, because it's it is massive. And if we skip on about 4 slides, Jack, we probably should have moved these around. But if you aren't on Zero yet, which is Zero with an X, you are missing out. It's an accounting software. It's a platform that runs all of your bookkeeping, your management accounts, and tracks and records all of your spend within every business that you've got. And you can use the referral code, which is the bit.ly link on screen, to get 90% off of the subscription of Zero for 6 months if you use that referral code. So if you're not on it already, absolutely take a screenshot, note it down, and get yourself a Zero account.
Good. So I'll do this one because Ben normally does it. What we would love for our listeners to go, I know that we've got some lovely loyal listeners out there who would move mountains for us. So one of those mountains today, if you could just share this with one person that you know, if you could leave us a review. In that review, make sure you can be constructive as well. You could say, we want to see a bit more of this. For example, Gareth Howe a few weeks ago asked if we could put videos on Spotify, and guess what? We did. We're great like that. But anyway, the more following, the more rating we get, obviously it boosts the program, and the more sort of, I suppose, energy and efforts that we can actually put in. We've got some interviews coming up with people which we're doing on other people's podcasts, but maybe one day we might be able to do a little bit more with our podcast as well. But thanks very much for following, and we'd massively appreciate if you could share it. Non-exec session. Do you want to take this one, Ben?
Yeah, so for those that don't know what a non-exec is, it's a non-executive director. I mean, you can step in, as and when, but non-executive director. Essentially, what you're looking for with that is someone that's been there, done that. They've been in the business sphere, business industry for a while. They've seen a lot of businesses. They've seen a lot of successes, and they've seen a lot of failures. And their goal really is to take a helicopter view and ask the difficult questions about your business, the stuff that you don't always talk about internally, you sort of know is there, and maybe you should be doing something to improve profitability or have that awkward conversation with one of the team members. But you sort of don't do it because nobody's pushing you to do it. And it's the right thing, but you just don't have that nudge. And that's what the non-executive director is there for. It's to ask the difficult questions and hopefully give you the guidance to steer your business in the right direction for the short term and the long term. And we typically do these every quarter. We might have a that's sort of face to face, which we did today, every quarter, and then a catch up every maybe month or so, 6 weeks on a Zoom call just to check in and look at some of the clear actions that you've set yourselves. But if you've not got one of these, I think it's if you're riding solo, if you've got a small team, you can maybe think that this type of thing is an added expense that you don't know. You might think, I know where my business needs to go. I know what I need to do. But I guarantee there'll be things that are picked up by a non-exec director that you hadn't thought of, or they're using their experience to say, this worked in this particular case, but have you thought about doing it this way? Which one of my other businesses did, or one of my other contacts did, and it's a direction that you might not have thought of. So it is an expense, but fundamentally the amount of money sort of saved, or the amount of saved from mistakes that you might have done without this type of guidance and advice, should outweigh the cost of actually bringing someone like this in. If you've not got a non-exec, or you can't have a non-exec director, I would wholeheartedly kind of recommend at least looking for some sort of business coaching. And for the last, I would say 5 years, I've had business coaches in pretty much all of my businesses, ranging from probably 400 quid a month to a couple of grand a month, depending on sort of the level of input and what you need. But without somebody else taking an outside view of everything that's going on in your business, I guarantee that you will be making decisions that are hard decisions, but the right decisions, or sorry, you are not taking the steps or not taking the decisions that are the right thing for your business, but are hard decisions to do, because nobody's there to kind of push you and nudge you and actually sort of have that hard conversation. So that's what a non-exec is. I'm not really sure what Jack wanted to get out of this title, so I'll let you crack on, but that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, we talked about non-execs before, and have you ever seen a business owner that's you just see them, like a good friend of mine, Dorian? He's just got so much clarity, and that is because he bounces ideas off people. He doesn't get that clarity from just waking up and be like, I know exactly what I'm going to do because that's what I think we should do. The phrase, all of us are smarter than one of us, and that is completely true. Perspective, view, age, risk appetite, creativity, personality traits, all of these things you need to try and test. And the best entrepreneurs out there ask people that they meet, what are you seeing in the market? What would you do in this situation? How do you feel about this? And actually that's why some people on the spectrum, like my good friend Johnny, he's really good at business because he asks so many questions. Like when I meet with him, I feel like he's got 50 questions saved in his notes on his phone, and he's like, what would you do in this scenario? What would you do in that scenario? And I don't ask him any questions. I'm like, I need to come prepared with these questions because it's perspective and view on other people's opinion. And sometimes what I love about our non-exec sessions is sometimes it's even me asking Ben the question or Ben asking me the question, but because we're out of the business, we're not looking at head in our emails. We're not distracted day to day. This is a strategy meeting, and we have to focus on strategy. We drive understandings and productivity and ideas that we wouldn't get in the day-to-day. And the reason I put a plus and minus on the screen is zooming out to zoom in. That is a phrase that I learned on the Goldman Sachs course. I love it. You have to zoom out to zoom in, and we did exactly that today on every business. And sometimes the business coach or the non-exec or even your friend is not actually the one doing the actual answering. They're doing the questioning. And a lot of people have said before that A non-exec is sometimes someone that just holds up a mirror and asks you questions about what you can see and where you can see yourself going, not necessarily opening up windows of opportunity, but a mirror of reflection. And that's really, really key. And I love it. So a friend of mine who runs a successful property business in Australia, shout out Big John, he asked me, should he have a non-exec? And I was like, well, do you have any form of advisory in your business? So I don't want our listeners to get caught up with the phrase non-exec advisor. It's very formal, very corporate, very, suit and tie. And it's not that. That's not what we're getting at. We're talking about advisory in your business. And the principle of it is you need someone to bounce ideas off. It can be, and when I say someone, a minimum of one person, a maximum of as many as you like, because you kind of need that advisory person, and that could be a friend, that could be another successful business owner. My dad, when he was growing his business, he lent on the sort of the experience of another entrepreneur that was a lot older than him, and that was his sort of guidance. But it was a very informal setup. And my response to my friend who's operating in Australia is, yes, you need an advisor. And then he said, well, how much do I spend? And I said, well, if you work out, like, let's say your business is netting a profit of 250K. If you want to take that to 2.5 million quid, do you really think you're going to get there unless you're investing some of that 250K for next year's growth and next year's growth and next year's growth? And what you may find is when you are then netting 2.5 million quid, you might need a completely different person to take you to 25 million quid. So I think it should all be relative to where you're at. If you're running a bakery turning over 100 grand a year, you could probably lean on a successful business owner that's local and not actually pay them. If you're trying to grow a development company like ours, we've got someone from a business background with financial understanding to really help us get to grips with what we're operating and how we're running it and where the cash flow management comes from, because that is a big problem in big development companies that have a group structure. But then again, to give you an example, another advisory that we have in our business is our tax advisor. He's a paid tax advisor. He does all of our accounts. And if I want his opinion, he will answer his honest view. And then I may have, we may have advisors that are, friends. It could literally be anyone. And I know that Ben sometimes uses his wife as an advisory. What do you think about this?
She says.
What do you think about that? It's funny. I come into my wife and she'd be like, "Do you want to talk about it?" I'm like, "Nah."
It's just going to end in an argument.
Oh,
nice.
Good. Cool. It's on me, isn't it, to go to the next slide? Cool. And one thing I did want to say is, I kind of feel that whether it's getting our heads together for just to meet with our non-exec, it's doing finance reviews, and Ben and I spending time going through finance is sometimes a task that can take a back seat, because you kind of, what's the to-do list? It's like urgent, I can't even remember it. It's like
important, urgent, important, not urgent.
Anyway,
what do we mean? The quadrant.
There's one. Yeah. Anyway, but when finance review is a very routine. If you change it, it doesn't really change anything, right? You're doing analysis of something that's happened and forecasting. So you sometimes can get caught up in the day-to-day and not to do that. So sit down, zoom out to zoom in with your advisor or someone, and you can even do that with just a friend. But then also from a director's position, you need to get onto your finances frequently. And Ben and I did that the other day, and it's good to have that clarity, because you can sometimes feel like it's almost like, if you don't know where Josh Keegan talks about it all the time. If you're in the middle of the sea and you don't know where you're swimming to, it makes life very, very difficult, and you're just treading water. So you kind of need that foresight of where the business is, the health of the business, and where it's going. And it's okay to bring money in, as long as there's value to be received at some point in the future. But if there's no value there, then you're obviously bringing money in just to delay a problem, essentially. Any more on finance review?
No, I think we've spoken about it enough. Hopefully those that tune in regularly, get why we're pounding on finance reviews, cash flow reviews, checking your profit and loss, management accounts, understanding your balance sheet. You cannot run a business without these things in place. You can you can be the best property developer or the best builder in the world and be able to, you know, create properties and deliver them, etc. But if you don't understand the business fundamentals behind it, you know, you're just going to start treading water and failing. So yeah, get to grips with your finances. And, you know, Jack mentioned Josh there, Josh Keegan. He runs the Ultimate FD podcast. If you haven't tuned into that, another shout out for him, because there's always golden nuggets on his podcast that will help you in your business and make sure that you are a finance driven business. Nice. Cool. On to point number 5 then. Sorry, I forget. I'm looking at my screen. I'm normally the one doing the tech. So I'm like, this hasn't changed screen. Why not? But it has. So yes, we mentioned last week we had a big announcement. And the announcement was that we are joining forces with Tyler Newman and his property education platform to bring you more value, basically. You know, we've been doing these Friday lives every Friday for the last 2.5 years now. That's a lot of podcasts. That's a lot of our time. That's a lot of value shared. And you know, if you're listening to this, that there is value here. There's lots of value that everyone tells us. You know, we spout from our mouths, and we love doing it. We love helping people. We love guiding people within their businesses. We love helping people find opportunities, property opportunities, fund them, and then help to, with all the nitty gritty of my building control woes in terms of delivering property development. So we're bringing a development mastermind to the fore. It's been something we've been planning for the last 6 months. We've been in the background, recording various pieces of content, and effectively, what you get in these Friday lives is only a real snippet of what's going on in our businesses and some tidbits and tips and tricks, and in the hour that we can, kind of giving you as much value as possible. But these the development mastermind is all about a 12-monthly kind of mentorship program led by Jack and I in terms of delivering the content, running through that whole sort of main 3 steps of a property development business. It's finding the opportunity, it's funding the opportunity, and then it's delivering it successfully and getting as much profit in your back pocket as possible. It's going to be launched very, very shortly. The video that you see on screen is, this sort of video sales pitch. So if it pops up on your screen, it's because you like property, you maybe follow us, and you're getting targeted by the adverts that we're posting out there. But we can only do it with a certain number of people. We are very, very limited on time, and that time is being sapped up even more with the one-to-one consulting and the stuff we do outside of the delivery of the property developments that we're doing. So we can only work with a small number of people. We only want to work with people in the industry, people that are have a background in architecture, in engineering, in building, in contracting, in quantity surveying, in party wall. So all of those industry specialisms, because fundamentally property development is tough. And if you're starting from literally scratch with no knowledge, it's probably a waste of our time and it's a waste of their time. So we want to work with people that are already in the space, that have some industry knowledge, that want to step it up, have always been sitting there at their desk thinking, I don't want to line anyone else's pockets. I don't want to be doing this, for the rest of my life. I want to carve my own path, do my own property developments, and ultimately try and build, wealth in property that can sustain, your legacy and your, decades to come. So if that's of interest, if you tune into these regularly, if you want to step it up a notch, if you really want to dial down and effectively, create a 7-figure development business within the next 12 months and, be guided by Jack and I, then there is a link in the description down below where you can register your interest, fill out an application form, which Jack and I will review and decide whether or not you make the cut and come and work with us, which we're super excited to do. So yeah, if you've got any questions, DM us. There is a link down below. Register your interest. One of the team will be in touch and have a chat and hopefully, work with you very soon. And that's it.
Good. I mean, it's kind of the same topic, really, isn't it?
Yeah, skip on.
Yeah. We've actually, on that, we've had our busiest quarter of mentoring and ad hoc one-to-one sessions. So it's been a very intense years so far. I feel like there's some
if you have been booking in on those consultancy calls and you are watching, drop us a comment down below. Tell us what you've thought. I mean, I know that some conversations that I've had, we've been able to save significant, tens if not hundreds of thousands with the hour-long conversations that we've had, purely by, again, some of the lessons that we've learned that we can share and pass on.
Yeah, I would say if you're not in a position where your business needs a non-exec, you're probably in a position where you could do with some mentorship. Cool. So this was actually, this slide and the next slide was a question from a mentee that I did a session with this week. And it was basically, what's the difference between profit on GDV before finance and what's the difference between profit on GDV after finance? Now, I don't know why anyone does profit on GDV before finance, because even if you don't need finance, you should be charging your own finance at a finance fee, because otherwise it's an opportunity cost for that finance. So that is my particular view. So on your own spreadsheets, if you're not including the finance costs, who are you kidding? So this is a really, really important metric that I would love for everyone to start integrating, making sure that when you're reviewing deals, the finance costs are factored in, because you're going to pay finance costs. Now, where it might be useful to not share finance costs is if you're sending your deal to a lender, like a debt lender or a mezz lender or an equity lender, and you want your deal funded. If you don't have the finance costs in there, they don't know they don't know what you're expecting to pay in finance. So the reason I'm mentioning that is because if you mention a really high cost, they may go, oh, well, we're actually undercharging here. They've got a bigger budget. So where it might be useful in that particular instance is to send it to a debt lender. But I would highly recommend that you just always keep it in, because why not? You're going to be paying finance costs. And if you're not paying finance costs and it's a cash deal, there is an opportunity cost there in for finance. Among the profit on GDV, which is what banks and lenders like to see, we also use other metrics into our spreadsheet, such as the stress testing model. I know we've talked about this before, but it's super, super key that we hit that profit position if all three of these things happen. So GDV decrease, build cost increase, and duration increases. Also, we're looking for an annualized return for the business, because the business costs money to run. And if you're not making that annualized return across your projects, you might not be actually running a profitable business, P&L profitable business. And then also the annualized rate of return for the investor is also a key metric, so that you know it's saleable in the investment space if you do what we do when you find a deal and find the investment. Hope that was useful. That's pretty much what I said in the mentoring call, and now you guys have that. So you can have that one for free, and you can have this one for free as well. But just before we get into this, I will caveat that we are not tax advisors, and this is not tax advice. This is my silly opinion, and opinions are a bit like arseholes. Everyone's got one. But the question from a mentee was, they're still set up in not even a sole trader, from a personal property ownership perspective, which, is fine if that's what you did. But we are doing deals in the future. It's something to be considered how you want that set up. And it's not easy. You kind of need to look at your own situation, as in, where you are, is it going to be your primary residence? Is it going to be an investment property? Where do you want to be living? What do you want to be doing? These are all factors that need to come into consideration, but any individual will have a different scenario. But generally speaking, I just generally say, if you're going to be doing property over and over again, or as a career, we believe that a limited company structure is much better nowadays, because of taxations that have been brought in by the government, actually under the Conservative government, to basically tax you on essentially the gross income of a rental property. And then also from a sole trader perspective, if you're doing a development, you will be liable for capital gains tax as well. So essentially get tax advice. But my view is, I think if you're going to do more than one project at some point, you're better off getting the tax advice to lean into a limited company structure and to go down that route. And that is my opinion. And as I said, it's not advice. Ben, anything else to add?
I'm getting absolutely smashed with tax with the properties I've still got in my personal name, to the point where I need to sell it, really, because when you work out the maths, I'm typically paying for that flat now. It's no longer an asset which I bought it for. It's a liability where it's costing me money every month when you factor in all of the tax that I'm paying. paying against it. So, I don't know of any other businesses or any other situations where you are taxed on turnover and not taxed on revenue. Taxed on turnover, not taxed on profit, which is ludicrous, really. I'd like to hope that it gets backtracked at some point, but I can't see that happening. Certainly not with a Labour government. So, I still think if you're setting things up and you want to grow a property, I think that the way I describe this is gone are the days where you can sort of dabble in property on the side. With the way that legislation has gone, with the risks and the regulations now around rental properties and the management of those rental properties and the fire risk assessments and all of the stipulations and red tape that go against it, you have to operate your property side hustle as a business. If you're not, it puts you in a real tricky situation. Forget, with the tax situation aside, you have to look at it as a business. You have to think about it and operate it like it is a business, whether it's in a limited company or not. You really have to be so clued up in terms of the risks that you have when renting out your property. So I think limited liability within the limited company is the way to go.
That is just such a head fuck. Got a fun VAT conundrum for you guys.
VAT on a Friday, you sure?
VAT, yeah, you guys will like this because it's about food.
Oh, that's all right. Deal with that.
So a plain shortbread is a biscuit, therefore there is no VAT. So if you're buying a bit of shortbread, there's no VAT. If the plain shortbread has a chocolate topping, like where they dunk it, and you're still buying it, it's then technically a chocolate covered biscuit that is 20% VAT.
Ridiculous.
Okay. Now the chocolate biscuit has got a layer of toffee between the chocolate and the biscuit, like a millionaire's shortbread. And we're back to zero VAT because it's now a cake. So if you've ever wondered that, that is a little fun fact for you on Friday.
Ridiculous. VAT. Oh, I mean, it's still the amount of VAT conversations we have within our property business is ridiculous. I mean, we had our tax accountant in last week, like we said. I still don't really know where we've headed with our VAT. We're changing our group structure to make sure that we're retain VAT over here and we get relief for it over here, and it is chaos. But something.
Don't worry, I don't just specialise in shortbreads. It's all up here, Ben.
I am a specialist.
I mean, I could probably share it because it'll be quite funny for the listeners to hear. We've got a state-owning group entity which we are developing sites in, but we're now having to move one of our SPVs into XP Estates Commercial to develop the site. But then when the residential's finished, it goes to XP Estates Residential Limited under the group structure. So we'll have commercial assets and resi assets split underneath the owning entity group structure. So that's what our accountant's working on at the moment.
Yeah. Fun times.
I thought this was an interesting one. Same mentee asked me this question. I actually really enjoyed that mentee session, getting absolutely pillared to the post. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And it's good to sometimes ask yourself the question. But the question is, why do we not invest up north? And it's because it's colder in the north, so we don't like going up there. Is one of the reasons.
Is that map technically the north-south divide? Is that I've never seen this map before. I
reckon so, because Christina's from Leeds.
Interesting.
So she probably knows. I mean, I think that the red bit is all the way down to Banbury. As soon as you get to Banbury, that's the north for me.
Is it not Watford?
I mean, Banbury and Watford's not far on the kilter. So a bit of an explanation of why we like sticking down to the south for investing. And now it's kind of like it was a buzzword and a buzz thing that you go to a property networking event and people are, I'm going up north for yield. A friend of mine, Ryan, he actually moved his whole family up to Darlington. And quite frankly, we haven't done that. So why haven't we done that? So I personally believe it depends a lot around the strategy that you are doing. A lot of people that I know that do invest up north may have spent some time living up north, so their knowledge of that area is really key. So we like investing in areas where we have the knowledge of what in there is. We don't call it, what's the cringy phrase that people use? what's it called? Something like money area or something. Gold mine
area.
Our gold mine areas are down south, but we like operating areas where we have knowledge. So every development in every location that we have, we know the area, we breathe the area, we've understood it. So that's one key thing before we get into any of the strategy stuff. But I wanted to go into the strategy stuff to explain why. So developments and build to sell is where you're buying a site, developing it and selling it, right? So the exit of that is gross development value. It's the pound per square foot that you're exiting at. If you are operating in Darlington, you're probably getting paid £200 a square foot to develop to sell that site. If it costs you £250 a square foot to develop that, you're at a loss. So we develop to sell in our development company. Therefore, we like getting paid for that development. Marlow, we're hitting like 700 a square foot. Colney Hatch Lane will hopefully hit 900 a square foot. Abingdon will hit 500 a square foot. Tame will hit 500 a square foot. So these areas warrant us to build out for the build costs that we have. Yes, it is slightly more expensive in and out of London to develop, but it's not relative. It's not costing you double, so to speak. It might be costing you incrementally more, but the values are better. So that's one reason. Build to rent. Now, build to rent down south is more difficult because the capital values are higher and the rent is not discrepancy and relative the same. So build to rent actually works way better in high yielding, more northern locations. And when I say north, Manchester has seen huge growth over the years. So that is a bit of an anomaly. Birmingham equally too. Some other areas in the north are seeing some really good growth, like Liverpool. I think I'm pronouncing that Liverpool. But anyway, so we would recommend that if you are looking at developing up north, build to rent strategy might be something to look at. So what that actually is you're buying a plot of land or building a site out, renting it all out so you get a gross rent. You may then have operational costs to manage that. So whether you give it to a management company or manage it in-house, and then you're selling the income, like our social housing portfolio. And that might work, build to rent, whether it's social housing, private rented, so PRS, student, whatever it may be, might work up north better. HMOs, I kind of believe they kind of work everywhere. I've seen people build very successful HMO portfolios in London. I've seen we build them in Oxfordshire. I've seen people build them up north. So that's similar. They're kind of like a high cash flow solution and tends to work in those areas. It's probably easier to build a higher cash flowing portfolio up north, but then you don't necessarily get the capital appreciation in potentially the south. Service accommodation, similar, it works everywhere. Hotel, I see service accommodation is basically a hotel, but your stock is spread rather than all in one building. Kind of works everywhere in the UK. So I would recommend that probably could work nationally too.
I was listening to, actually was on the Josh Keegan's Ultimate FD podcast this week, talking to somebody that's built a service accommodation business. And I found interesting that he was sort of saying service accommodation is... there's so much supply now of people going into that space that he stays well clear of the sort of 1 and 2 bedroom type properties. His biggest money earners and most profitable type lets are large family houses, or basically houses that can cater for 8, 10, 12 people that are looking for group bookings, that are more difficult to get into. You got a lot of rent to SA type people that want to get into it and see it as a great way of making cash flow, which it can be very time consuming and operationally intensive. But because of the entry point and the lack of funds behind them, they can only generally, or they think they have to get into 1 and 2 bedroom flats because that's like the cheapest route into it. Whereas he's saying there's way more profit and there's way less hassle and lower occupancy rates but higher night rates the main purpose of this is there's less people operating in that space. So if you can secure and find those types of opportunities, you're weeding out a lot of the competition with that type of stock, as opposed to just the typical 1 and 2 bedroom flat, which is extremely saturated. So that was my
honestly I don't know how people run service accommodation businesses. It's kind of like notification galore. Cool.
Yeah,
on to flips.
Yeah.
Flips are obviously easier, like developments, to make them work in the south, but more difficult in the north because your budget against exit is different. But I do believe flips work in both locations. Trading works anywhere. Trading is basically taking something medium, low, or high and getting rid of it for higher values. So I would definitely say that trading works in all locations. And then I would also say planning is also a strategy that can work anywhere. The reason being, planning is kind of like a multiplier. You can spend 20k and get 80 return in value add. So it's a much more of a multiplier. Therefore, the value exchange is fair. I hope that's been useful, and that's why we stick south. Obviously, there's logistics like getting around sites and stuff. Like we can pretty much drive around all of our sites in one day, which is 5 sites. I can pretty much drive around all of our HMOs in one day, not both the same days, but we like that sort of locality that we're developing in, and that's definitely something that was considered. Tom has asked or said, I wouldn't want to spend 100k converting a HMO on a house I paid 100k for. It doesn't feel right. Completely agree, and that's actually why we stay in the south. My friend Ryan Beaumont up north does spend more than sometimes the house is worth, but he's doing investment valuations. That's what he wants to do, and that's what he can do. So I agree with you, Tom. I like actually the HMO portfolios that we've been building in the south. When we finish the conversion, we can sell it for more than we've spent on bricks and mortar valuation. We haven't done one HMO that could not be sold for more than what we paid and spent on it. And that's how we ingrain equity in our portfolio, because most of them are bricks and mortar valuations anyway. So completely agree with that.
On that note, do you want to give people a rundown of the fact that there are social housing investments that we have available at the moment?
Yeah, so I mean, one occasion I would do investment valuations is if you've got like a 10-year forward paying lease, and we do have we're essentially got the opportunity to break out a few of the smaller assets in our portfolio to raise investment for much smaller amounts for people to get onto the social housing fixed income investment, co-partnering with us. And you can come in and they're finished assets. There's no construction risk. There's already a lease in place, 10 years, full repairing, registered housing association, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you've heard about it. Contact us if you would like more details on it. But the returns are probably more than what you would expect from a dry income finished asset. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you if you are interested.
Nice.
Cool. I am still doing the slides. This takes a bit of getting used to. Oh, do you like this photo?
I just spotted this. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Marigolds on in a suit.
Yeah, that's you.
Lovely.
That's you as a CEO doing the cleaning. And that's the main topic we're going to talk about in this.
Nice.
So,
value of my time, clearly.
Yeah. So twice this week, I was speaking to two really successful entrepreneurs. One runs a construction business who was actually in the Ground Up Network. And one of them was at Tyler's event on Saturday, who runs a mobile, almost like mechanical business, making serious dough. So one of them is making good money, and the other one in a construction business is also making good money. And both of them, I asked them the same question. And it's because both of them have fee earners in their business. So the guy that runs the mechanic business, he's got like 5 vans that are always on the road, and he is the CEO, managing director of the business. And I sort of said, who else do you have in the business? He said, no one. So I said, it's you, 5 drivers and 5 vans. And he went, yep. And we worked out what his hourly rate was. And it was something like £550 an hour in that business, right? And this guy is doing admin, going to the post office, ordering supply loo roll for the toilet for the office. He's calling Vodafone to cancel a phone contract. He's doing all of this work, and I was like, if your hourly rate is £550, why are you not hiring someone at 20 quid an hour to do all of that shit for you? And it's not because it's a bad job. It's not because it's not worth his time. It's because it would then relieve him of those hours to go and do more £550 an hour tasks. And that's high value tasks. We talked about this before. So the easy way that you can work that out, and I'll actually use a construction guy as another example. I asked the construction guy, again, same question, other than people on the tools with a hammer in their hand, who else is in the business? Guess what his answer was? No one. I was like, well, there's your problem. And he said, why? And I said, well, what are you netting in your construction business? He was like, 150. I actually said, what are you netting in your developments? Because he's doing house flips. And he said, well, the last one I made 150k. I said, how long does it take? He said, a year. I said, how many hours? He said, 20 a week. And I said, that works out to be £144 per hour. And you're still cleaning the toilets in the office. You're still making phone calls to organize materials deliveries. And the principle is, if your hourly rate as a CEO, director, new business, strategist, bringing the right people in, hiring a team, all those high value tasks is what you should be spending your time on. The easiest way to work out whether you should offload that task is take the net income that you make from that business, how many hours you spend on it, and that is your hourly rate. So essentially, and we've talked about it before, high value tasks, low value tasks, and making sure you're focusing, spending more time on high value tasks and bringing team members in to do the low value tasks. And for me, I work in acquiring, structuring and funding, and my high value task is negotiating debt position, finding investors, hiring people in the team, dealing with strategic team meetings, internal team meetings. Ben's high value skills, he did an exercise when we were tendering for the old Maltings and Carney Hatch Lane, where I think he saved us hundreds of thousands by value engineering the design. Now that hundreds of thousands saved in 2 weeks is exactly a high value task. But maybe Ben, name a low value task that you've done recently that should be outsourced.
A low value task. Outsourced to who? Somebody that I pay for, or outsourced to the wife?
You can outsource things to the wife. Weirdly, you actually outsource things to people that you already have or know. So for an example, we moved our bookkeeping to our accountancy company, and I just said to them, look, I want you to do the invoicing. That was in Central Suites. I was like, I do not want to be doing the invoicing, because by the time I've logged into Xero and done that, I'd just rather send you a WhatsApp. You deal with it. It's not on our team. It's on you. You're going to be doing the bookkeeping anyway, so you kind of have sight of that anyhow, and then you can file that invoice. And they're like, yeah, cool, easy, done. Might cost me 20 quid, but the team can focus on being property people, managing filling rooms, maintenance. They don't have to worry about taking their estate management hat off and putting their finance hat on, especially when they're not doing it day in, day out. So
nice. We done?
We've got one question.
We do have a question from 30G. Great video. Is it possible to do the BRRR strategy with a mortgage? If so, how does it work? Can you share any useful documentation? Thank you.
I was going to say a really bad dad joke then.
Go on.
It was going to be turn the heating on. Is it possible to do a BRR strategy with a mortgage? It is. Essentially, it depends what term you're using as a mortgage. I would say a refurbishment facility that you could get with an Octane or a Shawbrook, or any of those types of Octopus, those types of lenders, is a mortgage. It essentially, a development facility is a mortgage. They're technically a mortgage. What you're thinking about is probably a buy-to-let mortgage. Now, normally buy-to-let mortgages don't let you do structural changes to the property without their consent. And I would imagine if you're doing a buy, refurbish, refinance that's quite intrusive in terms of works, maybe some structural works, you may need to notify them, and they may not like it. One thing I would suggest is, if you Google, I could actually probably do it on a screen share, but if you Google light refurbishment facility Shawbrook, and if you Google heavy refurbishment facility Shawbrook, you will see the difference in terms of their products and how it changes by the categorization of what works you're carrying out in your property. If you are doing less than the light refurbishment works, you could probably get away with it on a buy-to-let product. Obviously, speak to a mortgage advisor, speak to your mortgage company before you do anything. But redecorating, maybe a light bit of reconfiguring. To give you an example, we took a property on in Central Suites that was a rent-to-rent. We wanted to convert the living room into a bedroom. To do that, we needed to block up a doorway. So literally, there's a doorway with a door, and it goes through to the kitchen living space, but there's also a doorway to the kitchen. So you only need one door in a bedroom. So we blocked up the one into the kitchen living space so that was in a fixed wall. Realistically, you haven't really drastically, if a mortgage company actually came to the property, they probably wouldn't even notice the difference. That is limited amount of works. If we were to then put a sixth bedroom in, so it now becomes a HMO and needs fire compliance, a fifth bedroom in to make it a fire compliant HMO, that's drastically changing the property so that you could be liable for mortgage fraud in that particular situation. So what I would recommend is speaking to a mortgage company because it may determine how you go about that, because you might have early redemptions to get onto a product like Shawbrook who might be able to do the works for you. But we've got a really good broker we could highly recommend, Certi. If you want to speak to them, they will answer this question for you exactly and be able to put terms in front of you that you can work with.
Perfect. Cool. So yeah, thanks you very much for tuning in. If you have made it this far, do drop a like and a comment down below if you have enjoyed it. Share it with just one person is what we ask for every week. We are getting a lot of traction with the podcast now, which is absolutely incredible. So I think we've decided to now launch the podcast every Monday morning now at 5 p.m. instead of Tuesday at noon, because we've been able to streamline the process a little bit more. So yeah, it's going to be launching a lot sooner in the week, so keep an eye out for that. We'll probably do a post around that change. But thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend, and see you next week. Bye.